Welcome to Subject Soup. Across the U.S., millions of abandoned oil wells are silently leaking toxic methane gas, contaminating groundwater, and posing a serious threat to our environment. But what scientists are now discovering about these forgotten wells is more shocking than anyone expected. Hey everyone, buckle up as we dive deep into the wild world of abandoned oil wells across the U.S., a real environmental saga that's more dramatic than your favorite thriller. The real dangers of abandoned oil wells. Alright, first off, let's talk about the sheer scale of this problem. We're dealing with over 3.5 million abandoned oil and gas wells. These aren't just harmless holes in the ground, they're like ticking time bombs releasing a cocktail of nasty pollutants. Methane, benzene, hydrogen sulfide, these are just a few of the dangerous substances seeping out into our environment. Methane, for instance, is a major bad guy in the climate change story, as it's way more effective at trapping heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. Now, you might wonder, where are these wells? Well, they're pretty much everywhere: rural fields, old industrial sites, and sometimes even in residential areas. They were drilled over decades, used, and then simply abandoned, often without proper sealing. This careless oversight has left us with a legacy of environmental threats that are not visible to the naked eye but are impactful nonetheless. The impact of these emissions is not just on a small scale, it affects global climate change efforts. Studies have shown that the methane leaking from these wells is substantial enough to influence overall atmospheric concentrations. This isn't just an environmental issue, it's a massive oversight in managing our planet's health. And it's not just the air that's getting polluted. These wells can contaminate groundwater and soil, turning what could be productive farmland or safe drinking water sources into hazardous areas. This makes abandoned wells not just an environmental hazard but also a public health issue. Lastly, the unpredictable nature of these leaks makes them especially dangerous. They can be silent but deadly, or they can be as dramatic as causing explosions. Yes, explosions. This has happened when the mix of leaked gases and environmental conditions were just right. So, managing these wells isn't just about stopping climate change, it's also about preventing potential disasters. Startling discoveries about methane emissions. Moving on to methane, this gas is a big deal in the climate narrative. Recent studies and reports have highlighted just how much methane these zombie wells are spewing into the atmosphere. It's not just a few bubbles here and there, we're talking about significant emissions that can rival some small countries' entire output. Researchers have been tracking these emissions, and their findings are nothing short of alarming. Using advanced detection methods, they've pinpointed wells that are particularly problematic. This research is crucial because methane is such a potent greenhouse gas, and these wells are contributing a not-so-small part to the global methane budget. The problem is, tracking and measuring these emissions accurately is a huge challenge. Many of these wells are undocumented or poorly recorded, which means we might not even know where some of them are. This lack of data makes it difficult to grasp the full scope of the problem, let alone tackle it effectively. However, efforts are underway to improve our understanding. Scientists and researchers are employing everything from drones to satellite technology to sniff out methane from these old wells. This high-tech approach is helping to paint a clearer picture of where we stand and what needs to be done. But why is methane such a focus? Because it has over 25 times the heat-trapping capability of CO2 over a 100-year period. This means that even small amounts of leaked methane can have outsized effects on our climate. The role of abandoned wells in contributing to this methane problem is now being recognized as a critical area for action in climate policy. Lastly, the regulatory landscape is also changing. As the impacts of methane become more widely understood, governments and environmental agencies are starting to take more stringent actions to control these emissions. This includes tighter regulations on new wells and efforts to find and seal off old ones that are still leaking. Impact on communities. Now, let's bring this home, literally. For millions of Americans, these abandoned wells are not just statistics, they're a daily reality. Living near one of these wells can be risky. The toxins that leak can cause health problems, from respiratory issues to worse long-term effects like cancer. Communities near these wells are facing a silent but deadly threat. The economic impact is also significant. Property values can plummet when it's known that there are abandoned wells potentially leaking toxic substances. This can trap families in unhealthy environments because they might be unable to sell their homes and move away. Moreover, the social fabric of communities can be affected. There's often a feeling of injustice and neglect from the government and corporations responsible for these wells. This can lead to community activism and demands for accountability and action, reshaping how communities interact with industry and regulators. Efforts to monitor and mitigate the impacts of these wells are ongoing, but they often come too little, too late. Community members are increasingly taking matters into their own hands, using citizen science projects to track pollution and pressuring authorities for cleanup actions. And finally, there's the issue of preparedness. Many communities are simply not equipped to deal with the fallout of a leaking well. Local governments may lack the resources or expertise to effectively manage these situations, leading to prolonged exposure and increased risk for residents. Who's going to fix this mess? So, who is responsible for cleaning up this mess? Ideally, it should be the companies that drilled these wells in the first place. But many of these companies are long gone, or they've passed on the responsibility to others in a complex web of ownership that makes accountability difficult. State and federal agencies are stepping in, but the scale of the problem is overwhelming. The cost of plugging a single well can be tens of thousands of dollars, and with over 3.5 million wells, do the math, that's a lot of money, much more than what's currently available in public funds. Legal and regulatory frameworks are evolving to address these challenges. Some states have begun implementing more stringent requirements for well abandonment, requiring companies to provide financial assurances that wells will be properly closed. But enforcement is tricky, and many companies find loopholes or declare bankruptcy to avoid their responsibilities. The public is also a key player in this drama. Increased awareness and activism are pushing governments to take more serious actions. Communities are no longer standing by, they're demanding safe environments and holding companies and governments accountable. Innovative funding solutions are also being explored. Some proposals include creating state or federal funds specifically for well remediation, funded by taxes on oil and gas production. Others suggest that the industry itself should establish a pooled fund to ensure that resources are available for cleanup efforts, regardless of individual company fortunes. Innovative solutions on the horizon, and now for some good news, innovation is on the rise as we tackle this massive problem. Engineers and scientists are developing new technologies to more effectively seal these wells. These include better capping materials that last longer and are less likely to fail, as well as new techniques for detecting leaks before they become serious. One exciting area of research is the use of bio-based materials to plug wells. Researchers are experimenting with materials that can be pumped into old wells to form a solid, impermeable barrier. This could be a more sustainable and cost-effective solution than traditional plugging methods. There's also a push to repurpose some of these old sites. For example, old well sites are being transformed into geothermal energy production facilities, providing a clean energy source while solving the problem of well leaks. Community involvement is crucial in driving these innovations. Local groups are often the first to try out new technologies, providing valuable feedback and helping to refine approaches. This grassroots level of innovation is complemented by larger governmental and industry initiatives. Finally, as we look to the future, the lessons learned from managing abandoned oil wells can inform broader environmental and energy policies. Understanding the full life cycle impacts of oil and gas extraction can lead to more sustainable practices across the industry and help prevent similar issues in the future. So, as you can see, while the challenge is daunting, the combination of community action, regulatory reform, and technological innovation gives us hope. These wells won't fix themselves, but with concerted effort and smart thinking, we can tackle this problem head-on. If you've been enjoying the content and finding it helpful or interesting, I'd love to have you join our community by subscribing to the channel. It's completely free and helps the channel grow so I can keep bringing you even more awesome content. No pressure, but your support means the world to me. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you.